In the frost-bitten mists of the ancient north, where gods walked among men and the clash of steel echoed through the fjords, there flew figures not bound by mortal laws. With cloaks of shadow and eyes of fire, they glided through storm and battlefield alike. They were the Valkyries, choosers of the slain, servants of Odin, harbingers of fate, and guardians of glory. But beyond their glimmering armor and spectral steeds lies a tale far richer than blood and battle. Their story is woven into the very fabric of Norse myth, a tale of divine purpose, eternal struggle, and the thin line between life and the afterlife. Join us now as we journey into a world ruled by gods, giants, and destiny. This is the legend of the Valkyries.
In the golden halls of Asgard, high above Midgard and beneath the branches of the world tree Yggdrasil, sat Odin, the All-Father, god of war, wisdom, and death. As he gazed across the 9 realms, his one eye burned with a vision far greater than mortal minds could comprehend. For Odin did not merely seek conquest, he sought order within chaos, purpose within destruction, and heroes who would serve him in the battles beyond life. To fulfill this vision, Odin did not act alone. From the spinning threads of destiny itself, he called forth divine maidens, spirits forged in the crucible of fate. These were the Valkyries, valor meaning slain and kjosa meaning to choose, the choosers of the slain. But their origins were not merely divine decree. Their essence was also shaped by the hands of the Norns, the mysterious 3 sisters who dwell at the roots of Yggdrasil, Urd, what has been, Verdandi, what is, and Skuld, what shall be. These weavers of fate inscribed every life's path into the bark of the world tree, and into that sacred tapestry, the Valkyries were bound. Unlike mortal warriors, Valkyries were neither living nor dead, but something in between. They were spirits of both grace and terror, beautiful, awe-inspiring, and utterly otherworldly. When they appeared on the battlefield, they were not simply there to observe. They decided who would live, who would fall, and who would be honored in the halls of the slain. Clad in gleaming armor that shimmered like the northern lights, they rode through the sky upon winged horses, or in darker tales upon black wolves, with ravens circling above. Their weapons were not just spears and swords, they wielded the power of fate itself. Each Valkyrie was a paradox, a nurturer of fallen warriors and an agent of death, a servant to Odin, but also feared by gods and mortals alike. They were revered by the Norse but never fully understood. Some sagas whisper that they were once mortal shield maidens, elevated by valor and sacrifice. Others claim they were born of divine fire and starlight, existing long before the first sword was ever raised. But all stories agree on one truth. The Valkyries were the bridge between life and afterlife, war and wisdom, chaos and destiny. They were not only Odin's daughters, they were his eyes, his voice, and his will riding the winds of fate. To the Norse warrior, death in battle was not the end, it was the beginning of eternal glory. But this afterlife was not guaranteed. It was a gift reserved for the few, and the gatekeepers of that gift were the Valkyries. As war cries pierced the icy air and swords sang in the clash of shield and bone, they came. They rode unseen on ghostly horses, their armor glinting like distant lightning in the mist. At times they were invisible, mere whispers in the wind, at others radiant and terrifying with eyes like burning stars and hair woven with storm clouds. Their arrival was felt, not seen. A sudden stillness in the chaos. A final breath. A dying man staring skyward with awe and fear. These were no mere observers. The Valkyries were divine agents of fate. Odin, All-Father and God of War, had chosen them to shape the ranks of the afterlife. And so they walked the battlefields, weaving through death and blood, selecting warriors whose valor had not gone unnoticed. The chosen were not the strongest or the fiercest, but those whose fates were already marked by the Norns. The Valkyries whispered names that echoed through the ether. With an outstretched hand or a piercing gaze, they marked their chosen. A warrior struck down at that moment might find his soul lifted gently from his broken body. His bloodied limbs would remain behind, but his spirit would rise, borne on the wings of the Valkyries toward the halls of Valhalla. To die unchosen was to fade into Helheim, a dim grey realm of shadows and cold, a place of silence, of forgotten names. But the chosen, the chosen, would be honored for eternity, feasting and fighting at Odin's side, preparing for Ragnarök, the final war to end all things. Some sagas speak of Valkyries who wept as they selected their slain. Others describe them with grim smiles, savoring the beauty of death. In both versions they are untouchable, divine and dreadful, existing between the realms of gods and men. They were not just messengers of death, they were midwives of glory. Their judgments were absolute, their presence a sign that the divine watched closely. And for the warriors of the north, to see a Valkyrie in their final moment was not a curse but a blessing, wrapped in shadow and steel. In every battle cry, in every clash of axe and sword, the Norse believed the Valkyries hovered nearby, watching, waiting, choosing. Their role was clear and terrible, to decide who would live forever and who would be forgotten. Valhalla, the Hall of the Slain, was no paradise of peace. It was a golden hall of endless battle and eternal feasting, reserved for those whose deaths had pleased Odin. But the Valkyries' duty did not end with death. They welcomed the Einherjar to Valhalla, not as distant figures, but as companions. They served them mead in horned goblets. They sang songs of valor. They joined them in laughter, in dreams, and in training for the final battle. More than servants, the Valkyries were teachers, commanders, and allies. Each day the chosen warriors fought and fell again. Each night they rose to feast, and at the center of it all, the Valkyries, ever watchful, ever near. These were not submissive spirits, but immortal war maidens, bound by loyalty and destiny. They formed deep bonds with the warriors they chose, relationships that echoed in poetry and myth. Some tales even speak of Valkyries falling in love with mortals, forsaking immortality, and being punished or cast out for such disobedience. But always the beating wings returned to Valhalla, for their true purpose awaited. In the tapestry of Norse mythology, woven between threads of steel and shadow, there are moments not of battle, but of heartbreak. For even the Valkyries, divine and formidable as they were not immune to the pull of human emotion. Among them stood Brynhilde, a name whispered with awe across centuries. She was not only a Valkyrie, but also a shield maiden of immense strength and conviction. Like her sisters, she soared above the battlefield, her gaze fixed on warriors' fates, her heart loyal to Odin's will. But fate, ever fickle, turned its eyes upon her. One day Brynhilde was sent to decide the outcome of a duel between two kings. But rather than choose the one favored by Odin, she defied the Allfather and saved the other, guided by her sense of justice, not obedience. For this act of disobedience, Odin struck her down. Her armor was removed, her immortality stripped away, and her divine essence sealed in sleep, encircled by a ring of fire atop a mountain peak. Odin decreed she would remain there, trapped in enchanted slumber, until a mortal hero brave enough to cross the flames would awaken her. That hero came in the form of Sigurd, a legendary dragon slayer whose own tale was laced with magic, betrayal, and doom. He passed through the fire, awakened Brynhilde, and for a time love bloomed, fierce, pure, and otherworldly. But mortal hearts are fragile, and even the gods cannot escape the tangled web of fate. Through treachery and manipulation, Sigurd was led to betray Brynhilde, marrying another under a false identity. The heartbreak drove her into a spiral of vengeance. She ordered Sigurd's death and, overcome by grief and regret, threw herself onto his funeral pyre. Thus, the Valkyrie who once defied a god for love met her end not in battle, but in fire and sorrow. Brynhilder's story endures not just in the Völsunga saga or the Poetic Edda, but in the soaring arias of Wagner's Die Walküre, where her defiance, her fall, and her flame-fed grief are transformed into operatic legend. In her story, we see the duality of the Valkyrie, divine enforcer and passionate soul. They were more than choosers of the slain. They were women with will and depth, capable of love, heartbreak, and sacrifice. Brynhilder's tale reminds us that even in the world of gods and monsters, the most haunting stories are not forged by swords, but by broken promises and burning hearts. Each Valkyrie bore a name that revealed her essence: Skogul, Shaker, Hilda, Battle, Gundul, Mist, and more. They symbolized the many faces of war, fury, fate, mist, and mercy. Some were depicted as shield maidens in shining armor, others as spectral figures of death. To the Vikings, Valkyries were not fantasy, they were part of life. A warrior might dream of a Valkyrie before battle and wake knowing their fate was sealed. If they saw her, they knew their time had come. Their likenesses adorned amulets, rune stones, and burial carvings, often shown with wings, spears, and drinking horns. To wear their symbol was to invite fate, a badge of honor and risk. Even in modern culture, their legacy remains often misrepresented but still powerful. Divine women who held power over life, death, and eternal glory. Ragnarök, the final battle, the burning of worlds, the death of gods. At the end of all things, it is said that the Valkyries would ride once more, not to choose the slain, but to stand beside them. Leading the Einherjar, they would charge into battle under Odin's banner, facing the legions of giants, monsters, and chaos itself. It was a fate they had always known. Their preparations, their choices, their guidance of warriors through death, it all led here, to the ultimate war. Some say they perished in the flames. Others say they ascended beyond fate itself. But one truth remains: when the skies split and the earth trembles, it will be on the wings of the Valkyries that the last hope of the gods shall ride. The wings of the Valkyrie still beat, through symphony, screen, and soul. Though the age of Vikings has passed into myth, the Valkyries endure, haunting our stories, art, and imaginations like the echoes of ancient battle cries across a timeless sky. Their image, fierce and graceful, commanding yet ethereal, has transcended the sagas of old, taking root in the very heart of modern culture. Perhaps one of the most iconic modern depictions came through Richard Wagner's 19th century operatic masterpiece, Die Walküre, part of his epic Ring cycle. With soaring brass and thunderous orchestration, Wagner gave musical voice to the Valkyries in the unforgettable Ride of the Valkyries. This powerful score, used in everything from military films to apocalyptic dramas, transformed these mythic figures into near-mythological symbols of unstoppable force. In Wagner's hands, the Valkyrie became not just choosers of the slain, but choosers of narrative, emotion, and fate itself. In literature, especially within fantasy and historical fiction, Valkyries have appeared as both grim reapers and angelic protectors. Writers such as Neil Gaiman, Rick Riordan, and Joanne M. Harris have reimagined Valkyries with modern flair, giving them voices, choices, and internal struggles. In J.R.R. Tolkien's Middle-earth mythology, though Valkyries are never directly mentioned, their essence can be seen in the shield maidens of Rohan and in the elves' otherworldly grace. They represent something both terrifying and beautiful, figures who carry the burden of fate, yet act with fierce agency. In Marvel's Thor franchise, the character Valkyrie, portrayed by Tessa Thompson, is a powerful sword-wielding warrior whose past is haunted by loss. Though stylized and reinterpreted, she carries the spirit of the ancient Valkyries into a new generation, fighting not only for gods, but for her own redemption. In anime and gaming, Valkyries appear across titles such as Valkyrie Profile, God of War, Ragnarök, and Final Fantasy, often depicted as awe-inspiring figures of might and moral complexity. Their imagery, feathered wings, armor glinting under battle skies, and stoic resolve has become shorthand for empowered femininity and mythic justice. But beyond story and spectacle, the Valkyrie has become a symbol of strength, sacrifice, and transformation. In modern feminist and warrior archetypes, echoes of the Valkyrie resound. They represent women not just as nurturers or love interests, but as determiners of destiny and bearers of power. They remind us that strength and beauty are not mutually exclusive, that courage can come in the form of protection, judgment, and compassion in equal measure. Today, Valkyries live in cosplay, in digital avatars, in art and tattoo ink, in the quiet moments of courage when someone rises against all odds. Whether in a courtroom, a hospital, or a battlefield of another kind, modern Valkyries wear no wings, but they choose paths with purpose. Their wings still whisper through our collective imagination, reminding us that every end has its chosen, and every battle, its watchers. The Valkyries are not gone. They've simply changed form. The Valkyries are more than myth. They descended from stormclouds and vanished into legend. But the Valkyries have never truly left us. They are etched into the memory of every warrior who stood against impossible odds. They are felt in the hush before battle, in the honor of sacrifice, and in the silence that follows victory. They are more than myth. They are the soul of courage made flesh. Even now in our stories, in our art, in every whisper of Norse legacy, their wings still beat. The Valkyries remind us that valor does not die. It ascends. And as long as we look to the skies and remember those who dared to defy fate, they will ride again, not just in battle, but in every moment we choose bravery over fear. This is not the end of their story. It is our invitation to carry it forward. The legend lives on.
Thank you for watching. Please like, share, and subscribe.